I get these types of questions all of the time. What do you think I need to start shooting weddings? Is my gear good enough? Do I need a new camera? Should I maybe get another lens? I heard X brand was better than Y brand for weddings. Do you think I should switch? So you know what? I'm gonna answer all your questions today. Today we're talking gear, specifically gear for weddings. What's up? I'm Jay LeBlanc, wedding photographer and photography educator. If you're trying to break into the world of weddings and you're trying to figure out what type of gear you need, this is the perfect video for you. Let's play a little game. If you are an experienced wedding photographer who clicked on this video, or even if you're somebody who doesn't have any experience in weddings, and you hypothetically had a $2,500 budget to spend to build a wedding kit from zero, what would you buy? What cameras, lenses, and other accessories would you put into that kit with a $2,500 budget? Pause the video right here, comment below, what would you put into your kit? And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'll tell you what I would do with my $2,500 budget. Keep in mind, this video is for somebody who is looking to get into wedding photography as maybe an assistant or a third shooter, or somebody who's looking to take the lower budget weddings. But a lot of what I'm going to cover in this video will also be a great kit for a portrait photographer. And throughout this video, without dropping any names, I'm going to be sharing with you some stories that might leave you scratching your head a little bit from assistants and third shooters that I've had work with me. And while some of these stories are kind of funny or a little bit ridiculous, I hope that they will help somebody learn from others' mistakes. So let's just jump right into the first piece of gear that many of you probably already have, but wondering if it's good enough for weddings. It's going to be your camera body. There's so many good entry-level DSLR cameras out there, or even a lot of mirrorless cameras that will be more than suitable to get into this type of photography. Ideally, you're going to want to look for something that you have the ability to push the ISO to maybe 800, 1600, 3200, maybe even 6400, and still get a usable image out of it. A lot of crop sensor cameras these days have great ISO abilities, but when you're considering a full frame camera versus a crop sensor, usually the full frame sensor is going to have slightly better ISO abilities, meaning you won't have as much noise as you start creeping into those higher ISO ranges. And with so many people nowadays switching from DSLRs into mirrorless cameras, you can definitely pick up a very, very usable DSLR camera on a used market. If I'm looking to go the used route with a DSLR, I'm gonna look for something with a full frame sensor, and the newer the camera body, most likely means it's going to have better ISO capabilities and some of those little bells and whistles that some of you might be looking for in a camera. And this is your ability to get a really good camera at a great price, as the market is definitely switching towards mirrorless bodies, but DSLRs are more than capable of still producing a very, very good image. And there's still a lot of photographers out there that are making a living using DSLR cameras. So if it were me right now going to look at getting a used DSLR, I'm going to be looking for something maybe 5 to 7 years old, and I think that camera will get you by for the next 3 years or so, maybe even longer. If you're a person that prefers something brand new, maybe look at some of the crop sensor cameras out there. Some of these new mirrorless cameras that have the technology that mirrorless cameras bring, but in a slightly cheaper package with a crop sensor, you can still get a great camera. So do a little research depending on your camera brand. I'm not going to tell you an exact model to get until the end of this video when I do my budget breakdown. So take a look around, figure out what's most important to you, and then you can figure out which route to go. If you're going used or the refurbished route, I'm not talking go on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace and look for a camera there. Sure, you could get a great deal, but things can get a little sketchy when it comes to those, so I tend to stay away from that. I would prefer to look at websites such as B&H or Adorama or KEH, or even buying refurbished directly from the manufacturer. Because you know these retailers are going to look over the camera, make sure everything's working, probably clean up the body, and most of them are going to give you a 1-year warranty, maybe 6-month warranty with it. So if anything happened to the camera in that time frame, they'll fix it for you. And sure, it's going to be a little bit more expensive buying it from one of these companies versus Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, but at least it'll give you the peace of mind knowing that the camera's in good working condition and it wasn't stolen or anything. I had this assistant one time that they took their camera out, they were going to shoot a little bit, and they came over to me and was like, I don't understand why my screen is black. Every time I take a picture, it's just black. And I was like, well, let me take a look at it. And sure enough, the lens cap was still on. I mean, come on, we've all been there, so I can't make fun of them too much, but before you ask somebody else why your pictures keep coming out black, just check the front of the lens. Make sure the lens cap isn't on. Probably your second most important piece of gear is going to be the lens. Now, we could go two routes here. We could go with a zoom, or we could go with a prime. Personally, I think if you're only going to have one lens, I think a zoom lens is going to be a better bet just because it's going to give you more bang for your buck. Because you're going to be able to cover a wider focal range with only one lens. Now, if the budget allows for multiple lenses, sure, prime lenses are a great option. But I think if we're only having one lens, we're going to go zoom. I would suggest looking at something like a 24-70, 2.8, or even the f4 version is pretty good. Or even better, if we're only using one lens, would be a 24-105. I'll tell you right now, my first 3 years of shooting weddings, I shot with a 24-105 f4 as my only lens. And it got me by and did a great job for the most part. Very rarely did I find myself in situations where it wasn't adequate enough for the shooting situation I was in. Now, if we are going to go the route of shooting primes, I would probably look into something like a 35 or a 50. A 50 being the kind of go-to option because that's what the human eye sees, meaning it's not telephoto or anything compressing compared to what we normally see as humans. And it's nothing wide and distorted to make it show more than what we can actually see in our normal line of vision. A 35 is also a good option because it's a little bit wider and allows you to work in some tighter spaces. Now, you could probably get a cheaper 35 and 50 millimeter for about the price of a 24-105. So that is another option if you want to go down that route of investing in slightly less expensive lenses. And going with the primes, you'll also have the benefit of having a faster aperture, which could be nice for shooting in darker locations, or if you're looking to get a little bit more of that background separation with more bokeh and out of focus, beautiful, soft creaminess that you have to your picture. I love it when people come up to me and say, "You have a really good camera. How do you get the person in focus and the background out of focus like that? You must have an expensive camera." And I say, yeah, sure, bud. It's the camera. Nothing to do with me or the lens or anything else going on. It's all the camera. Any seasoned photographer, I'm sure, has gotten this comment before because people love to tell you how good your camera is. Okay, time for the next story. And this is a good one. I had my assistant arrive at the wedding with a dead camera battery. I said, okay, no problem, man. Throw a different battery in. You can throw that one on the charger. And they told me that was the only battery they had. They arrived to a wedding with one battery and it was dead. Let's just take that one in for a moment. I can't make this stuff up. I mean, I don't care what type of photographer you are. If you show up to a shoot with one dead battery, you might have a little bit of a problem there. Can't help you on that one. But please, I hope you never make that mistake. And I think the important takeaway from that story is, don't just have one battery. You want a lot of batteries. I would suggest having enough batteries to get you through at least 2 of whatever you're shooting. And don't forget that your environment that you're shooting in is going to influence the life of that battery. If you're shooting in extreme temperatures, heat or cold, the life of that battery is going to be significantly reduced. So if you find yourself shooting a job where you're going to be outside in these extreme conditions, definitely make sure that you have lots of extras because they will die much quicker than they would if you were shooting all indoors. And my next little horror story I got for you, I had somebody come out, shoot with me. They probably shot 200 pictures during the reception, and they got home, uploaded everything into Lightroom, and they called me and said, "Jay, everything is blurry and I don't know why." And after doing some troubleshooting in Lightroom, I figured out it wasn't Lightroom. And everything seemed to be blurry the exact same amount. So I was like, "Can you go grab your camera? Let's take a look at that. Maybe it's something wrong with your camera." And sure enough, you know what it was? Little switch on the side here that says AFMF. Yeah, we're going to want to probably not shoot an entire wedding with it on MF, meaning manual focus, and then not check any picture that we shot while we're shooting the job. Yeah, that's right. They shot the entire job on manual focus and everything was out of focus. Yeah, that might be a problem. Learn your gear. It'll help. Trust me, learn your gear, you'll thank me later. Next up on our list is memory cards. You're gonna need a couple memory cards. You can't just have one because if one goes bad, you're in trouble. Or if you have a camera that takes 2 cards, why would you only put 1 card in a camera that takes 2 cards? Let's have some backup. That's why they're there. Personally, I roll with a bunch of memory cards. Each one of these are double stacked. I have like 50 memory cards. I just keep buying them. I don't know why. It's a photographer thing. They just love memory cards. And a little side tip, don't cheap out and buy crappy memory cards. Buy name brand stuff. Can't afford the super high speed ones for now, that's okay. Don't buy the knockoff stuff that you see on Amazon because you're just asking for problems when it comes to the cheap stuff. This is literally one of the most important parts of getting that picture. If you buy a cheap memory card and you have a problem with it, well then you don't have any pictures. sorry. And speaking of memory cards, here's another good story for that. One time I had an assistant who came out with me who was there just to be an assistant, but I told them to bring their camera because later on in the night, they were welcome to go out, shoot a little bit, and build up their portfolio. Well, when it got to that part of the night, they took their camera out, they took about 2 pictures, and their memory card was full. And they came over to me and said, oh, my memory card's full. What should I do? And I said, well, format it. And they said, I can't. I have 5 shoots on here that I haven't put on my computer yet. As soon as you shoot something, you should definitely get it in another location, on a computer, on a hard drive, somewhere else, so you have that shoot backed up somewhere, especially when you're dealing with weddings. You guessed it, story time. I had this assistant come to me. They said, I bought a new flash. Can I bring it with me to the wedding? And can you show me how to use it? Yeah, sure, no problem. I love educating my assistants to hopefully be 3rd or 2nd shooters for me one day. So I gladly said, bring the new flash along and I'll show you some tips and tricks during the reception. So they brought their flash and we put it on their camera and it wasn't firing. What was wrong? Well, they bought a Godox flash and it was brand new. And you know what the problem was? They bought it for the wrong manufacturer. Yeah, they were shooting on Canon and they bought a flash for Nikon. Not going to work there. Make sure when you buy gear, you're buying it for the right brand. And speaking of flash, if you want to shoot weddings, I don't care if you're a natural light photographer. At some point, you're going to need a flash. So buy one, keep it in your bag. You'll have it when you need it. You much rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Also learn how to use it. Just basic settings. Come on, it's a flash. It's not that scary. It's not going to hurt you or anyone else. I'm a really big fan of the Godox and Flashpoint system just because all of their flashes talk to each other. Sure, you could look at Profoto or Westcott. They also make great options as well. But personally, I'm invested into the Godox system and I think they make phenomenal flashes. And the best part is they're pretty cheap. So if they fall off of a light stand because somebody bumped into one and they break, it's less than $200 to replace it versus some of those other flashes that might cost $500, $600. And that hurts the wallet a little bit more when you break one of those. My next horror story, it's a good one. It's short, but it's good. I had a 3rd shooter who broke out a tripod and brought it out onto the dance floor. Yeah, that's going to be a no for me, dog. Which is actually a perfect segue into gear that you don't really need for wedding photography, or at least hold off on for now. And could you guess what the first thing on my list is? A tripod. I've used a tripod at maybe 1, 2 weddings in the last 5 years. They're not really needed. With weddings, you're in such a run and gun type of situation that taking the time to put it down a tripod and set everything up is just not realistic in most cases. So for now, you don't need to worry about the most expensive tripod. Use what you got if you have one. If you don't worry about it. Regardless of what your favorite YouTubers, TikTokers, influencers, or even camera manufacturers are trying to sell you, you do not need the latest and greatest new piece of gear every time it gets announced. A lot of photography gear is relevant much longer than the release date of the successor of whatever gear you're currently using. Yeah, it's going to bring some new updated bells and whistles that might be nice to use, but chances are what you are using in this moment is a pretty good option. And is there a reason to upgrade every 2 years to a new camera body? Not really, especially if we're on a tight budget. Cameras that were made 10 years ago are still being used by professionals today, so there's not necessarily a reason for you to upgrade every time a new camera comes out unless you can justify it because of your income. Or if that piece of gear is somehow going to make your life easier and more efficient. Oh, it's that time again. It's story time. I had this one assistant come out on a job with me, and all of their pictures were coming out dark. They had no idea why. So I took a quick look at their camera and I quickly see that we are shooting in a very dark reception room and they are shooting at ISO 100 and f11. Well, that might be a problem. If you don't know your gear, that's on you. You gotta learn your gear before you go out to work because you're gonna have to be able to troubleshoot these things on your own, but not learning your gear and basic camera settings might be a bit of a problem. I will say that this person thought that they had to shoot at ISO 100 because that's where the cleanest image will be with zero noise, and f11 to get everything in focus. I feel like they watched one too many YouTube videos that said ISO 100 is the only ISO to shoot at. If you're one of these people, I'll just let you know that's not true. For everyone who knows, you know. If you know, you know. Okay, I want to hear from you. Down below, drop some comments. I want to hear some of your duh moments that you've had as a photographer because you gotta laugh at yourself once in a while, right? And a couple other pieces of essential gear to get started into this is you're obviously going to need some way of processing these images. You're going to need a computer and probably a hard drive to back up everything onto. I'm not saying buy the top of the line brand new MacBook Pro for $6,000 because it has an M27 Max Pro chip in it. Nah, you don't need that. To run Lightroom, to process a couple images, you don't need the latest and greatest. But just make sure it's good enough to run these softwares. And then you're going to need a hard drive to back up everything onto. Because if you do put all your pictures on the computer's hard drive, I'm sure it'll fill up pretty quick. And one other little piece of gear that you may not even think about is your camera strap. Yeah, every camera comes with a camera strap, but they're not comfortable. If you have a camera hanging off of your shoulder for 10, 12, 14 hours, you're gonna feel it the next day. So I'm telling you now, invest in a decent camera strap, find something that's comfortable for you, and that you can see yourself wearing for a long period of time. All right, let's go jump on the computer and see what I would do with $2,500 if I wanted to build out a kit to start shooting weddings. All right, let's take a look at a camera first. So I am searching for the Canon EOS R6, which is a newer mirrorless camera. Sure, there's the R6 Mark II, but I still currently shoot with the EOS R6 at every wedding. It's actually what I'm recording this video on right here. So we can see at KEH, they have it for $1,663 in the best condition, and the one in the worst condition, $1,636, which is a little bit on the higher side. And directly from Canon, we have it for $1,619, which is a little bit better. And I know Canon runs sales on the refurbished stuff every once in a while, so if you keep an eye on it, you might be able to find it at a better price. And I also have it pulled up here at B&H, where it's actually $1,492, which is a pretty good price. But I even know it goes even lower than that. I know recently it was just on sale at Adorama used at $1,405, but since right now the lowest price I can find is $1,492, we're gonna go with that number. And next we're gonna check out the 24-105 that I was talking about. So here I have the 24-105 EF version from B&H used, which would require us to use an adapter, which isn't a big problem because the EF lenses with an adapter work very well on the mirrorless bodies. So that's no big deal, but they don't have it in stock, so we'll keep looking. KEH has the 24-105 EF starting at $765 all the way down to $318, which isn't bad if you don't mind it being ugly. I mean, I'm sure it still works just fine, it just doesn't look pretty, which is actually a really good price if you're willing to sacrifice on looks a little bit. And here we are on eBay, where I actually found a pretty good deal from an authorized Canon seller. They have the EF 24-105 for $282 or best offer. That's a pretty good deal right there. And if we look right down here, we have the RF version for only $523. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to add that to our kit. $523 is a pretty good price for the used RF version. All right, so we got the important things out of the way. So next we're going to check out some of the other miscellaneous stuff we'll need. And memory cards. Here's SanDisk Pro memory cards for $16 for a 64 gigabyte card, and I'm going to go ahead and add 4 of these to our shopping list just to make sure we always have enough memory cards and we don't have to worry about running out of space. Plus our Canon R6 takes 2 memory cards, so we want to make sure we're filling both slots and using the camera to its full potential. Up next we have batteries. Like I said earlier, we need extra batteries. We can't roll with just one. So this is the battery that the Canon R6 uses, the LPE6NH. Great battery, it lasts a long time, but I'm still going to add 2 more of these on top of the one that already comes with the camera, so we'll have a total of 3 batteries, and that's more than enough to get us through a wedding day. And they're $79 a piece, so it's going to be $158 for 2 of those. Next, we're going to have to add in a external hard drive. I'm already assuming that you have a computer, so I'm not going to add that to our list. I feel like most people have a computer, so I'm not including that in our budget. But I don't assume that most people already have an external hard drive. So we're going to grab a 2 terabyte external hard drive, which is perfect. I use these for the longest time. They're great for just storing your pictures on and backing up all your storage. And the last thing that we're going to grab to fill out our kit is going to be a flash. This is the exact flash that I use right now. I actually have 4 of these. This Godox V860 is a phenomenal flash. A lot of people are getting into the round head ones, but they're more expensive, and there's not that much of a difference between those and this flash. And those are about $100 more. You can also get these flashes much cheaper around the holidays. They always run sales on them. So if you want to hold off a little bit on buying this and you can make do in the meantime, you can pick this up closer to $100 around the holidays. And that brings our grand total to $24.66. Not too bad, staying under that $2,500 budget. And we're using a camera and a flash and a lens that I would have no problem shooting with for a very long time. Well, there you have it. That is my perspective as far as what I think you would need to at least get started shooting weddings as an assistant or a third shooter. Now, if I get enough likes in this video, I will make another follow-up video of what I think you would need to jump into that second shooter role, because the gear at that role is a little bit different. Not super different, but it's definitely different than a third shooter or assistant role. And if this video helped you out at all, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Till then, peace.